Alright, here we go again. We're going to flip this pile. This is our 2019 aerobic composting effort. We had a lot of rain yesterday, and I think a lot of it soaked into this pile. And then it got sunny this afternoon, so I threw that sheet over it. Oh yeah, I can feel it. Oh yeah. Remember last time I loaded it up with comfrey. This time I've got some rhubarb leaves. I've got a lot of burdocks that I dug out of the ground. Roots and all. And here's a burdock. Kind of cut the root off that one. Got a lot of these. Dug a lot of these out today. I've got a whole bucket full of tansy, a whole bucket full of stinging nettles, a couple buckets with goldenrod. So where is my, there it is, fork. Okay, let's get this stuff out of the way. I had to do a number on rhubarb. I'm trying a French experiment. Ooh, there's a mouse. Let's see if I can get him. Seen where he went. There's a little bitty hole right there. I can put a trap there. I'll catch him. We don't want mice. Let's see. They'll get more space over here, I guess. Well, who knows what's going to happen? This thing could be dead. There's a lot of wood shavings in here. Might have to go get some rabbit manure. That's got a lot of. Oh no, it's steamy. Rabbit manure has a lot of nitrogen. I think one of the highest rated manures for nitrogen. So if you got a pile that has a lot of carbon, sawdust or wood shavings or wood chips, that's probably the way to go. These. Comfrey's not too weak there. Lots and lots of moisture. That looks good. I don't think the camera's low enough for that. Who cares about me? This is what's important right here. Yeah, it's not eating that green stuff like it should. Maybe it is more in the center of the pile. So I'll put that in the trough. Yeah, it's got a lot of moisture right on the top, so it really sucked in that rain. I won't need to put any water on this one. Oh, and I also have some artichokes. If you got a small property, don't plant any some artichokes. They really spread. They want to live. If you have farm animals, that'd be a good one for letting the chickens pick through. Earth them up. Pigs. Goats would probably eat the leaves, wouldn't let them spread. That'd be an interesting experiment. Goat versus some artichokes. I have no idea who would win that one. Yeah, we got moisture. I actually got a little smell right now. Didn't have any smell the whole time. So I'm not going to add any more water. It must have really rained. But I left it on the cupboard. The burdocks. Look at that big old burdock. The ground has been so moist, it's just came right out. That's something worth talking about, is all these wild plants I got growing. And where I'm letting them grow is in the area that I designated as a prototype food forest. A little bit in the forest garden. Back there in a pawpaw patch they're growing. And the idea is, well, let's put that rough stuff in there first. The idea is you know, they're doing their thing to the soil. They're encouraging soil life to grow, and they're living and they're dying. They're adding their bodies to the soil. And what's going to happen if I didn't do anything is eventually the trees would take over, shade them out, and they'd be gone. You know, maybe a few of the hardy ones would remain. But because I'm doing this composting, I actually view them as a real nice asset to add to compost. Each one of these wild plants, they accumulate different amounts of nutrients, minerals. And now I'm recycling those into my compost. That is cool. Burdock is one that's got a high iron content. So we like iron. Iron is one of the probably more well dispersed minerals on the planet. Yeah, the comfrey is gone in the middle. It's 8. It's only that stuff on the edge where it wasn't working. I also have some moldy honey locust pods that's got seeds. I've done this before, and normally I load them into the pile right away when I first start the pile, so it goes through the whole process. And one year I was kind of surprised that a couple of them sprouted. So I transplanted them out to the wildland and got to thinking about this, and before humans killed off all the mastodons, that's how these seeds would sprout. You'd have to go through the stomach of a mastodon, or maybe like a giant ground sloth or something like that. So now if you want to plant honey locust seeds, there's actually a process where you got to go through, where you got to heat them up. Like you bring water to a boil, and you don't throw the seeds in boiling water, but you know, after it got to a boil, maybe let it cool down just a little bit, and then pour the water on the seeds. And that loosens that hard coat around the outside of the seed, softens it up. And so some of them won't even soften from that. You got to do it again. The guy Bill Mollison was talking about that once, and he says sometimes you got to do it 4 or 5 times. Well, I thought about that when a couple of them sprouted, and I thought, well, you know, this is kind of like putting it through the stomach of a mastodon. So I did it, I think last year or year before, where I tried to get more of them to sprout. And that pile actually was pretty hot, and it ate most all of them. I think I only had like 2 or 3 sprout. So now I'm going to add these pods in late. I probably going to keep this running for another 10 days. We're done. So we're going to have 10 days of those pods being heated up. We'll see how many of those sprout. Yeah, we have good hydration this time, boy, let me tell you. Almost too much. Well, my instincts are telling me it's good enough. It'll go. It's not soaking wet. So, I do have another little short story. I was reading an article on somebody's theory about how civilization started. A little bit of background. It could be 13,000 years ago or something like that. Humans were hunters and gatherers primarily. And, you know, they found some signs that maybe they had some larger groups, but not really. They weren't really in one spot. The evidence is they moved around a lot, which makes sense because, you know, if you deplete the assets or the food of an area, You got to leave it rest for a while, and the wild stuff will all come back. So you just move from one spot to another. And one of the theories that's out there is that civilization started because humans learned how to make beer. And beer drinkers probably would be happy to hear that. Oh, we got a reason to drink beer now, because they started civilization. But no, they actually grew grains before they started making beer. So it couldn't have been the beer. So just what was it that had them settle down? Because grains aren't very good food for us. They still aren't. The article didn't mention this, but there is one component to grain. I forget if it's a protein or what it is. It's called lectin. L-E-C-T-I-N. And it's a chemical that the seed uses to it actually kind of binds your system up. And probably in the past that an animal would try the seed and have some bowel problems or whatever and wouldn't eat it anymore. And that's why the seed had that chemical in it. Stinging nettle there. I picked those already in the glove. So this article goes on where they analyze the seed, finding out just what is it. Because when it turned it in, before we started farming and growing seeds as a crop, life was actually kind of easy. They kind of figured out that humans really only had to work like 20 hours a week or something to get their food that they needed, and the rest of the time was like leisure. Don't ask me how they could figure that out, but I'm just telling you a story about the article. So, so they went on to describe how life became actually harder when they started farming grains, all the problems they had, probably health-wise, and all the work they had to do to get them to grow. They didn't have diesel over hydraulics then. Everything was by hand or using animals. It was hard. And then once civilization got going, then we created a hierarchy. So then the people at the top, they didn't pitch in to do any of that work. So they needed more people to do work so that they could have their easy life. And then of course these people at the top, they needed their bureaucrats to keep everything running smooth. So these people that wrote the article are saying, well, why would humans, when they had things so easy, why would they so willingly want to be involved in civilization? What they figured out was that there's a form of opioid in grains, and wheat having the highest amount. And I forget the name, they had a name for it. It was a form of opioid, and it wasn't an opioid like the painkillers that you'll buy from those crooked pharmaceuticals. Not like that. It's more of one that just makes you feel good. A feeling of well-being. And they speculated that's why people allowed themselves to get involved in a civilization. That started it all. Well, I'm here to tell you the grains are even worse now because they've hybridized them and Now they're genetically altering them. There's even less nutrients in them. And more than likely, these scientists that work for those corporations have figured out ways to increase the feeling of well-being in them so that you get addicted to it. Super addicted. And they're going to make you into a real good citizen. You will do anything. You will work any job. If you're in the middle, if you're in the military, you'll not refuse any request. You're going to do whatever they say so that you can get your next batch of well-being feeling. They had a pretty long list of crops that do that. I was surprised they had dairy and cow's milk in it. But they went on to say what they thought that they were eating mostly back then. They said they were eating a little meat. I know the vegans won't like to hear that. But humans, and when they were natural hunter-gatherers, they were eating a little meat. They were eating a lot of fruits. They were eating a lot of nuts. And they were harvesting what they think were roots. Eating roots. So I found that article stimulating, if you know what I mean. So I found some comfrey that's kind of half eaten. I'll have to pick it out here and show it to you. Otherwise, all the rest of that was in the middle. It's all gone. There, see? So the stuff when I first started the pile, it was all green, but we didn't have any action going on there. I don't know why. Maybe it wasn't deep enough right there. I noticed I had elongated that pile a little more than normal, so I'm throwing more up onto the top now. Get it a little higher. So to kind of tie that story into this permaculture thing that I learned. Permaculture is actually focused on the environment. You know, the saying about permaculture is it's designing systems that will benefit both humans and the environment. Well, it's hard to benefit the environment if you're growing grain crops, because you have to cut down the forests and destroy habitats and plant a monoculture to grow most of those crops. I had a fella that asked me about, or he didn't ask me, he asked kind of generally everybody, and they had all these bugs and everything in his corn. What should he do? And everybody had these answers to try to get rid of the bugs or whatever. My answer was, don't grow corn. You have a lot of substitutes. A good substitute is hazelnuts. Just think, you plant this bush once and you got to wait a couple of years, 5 years sometimes, to start getting crops. And once you start getting crops, it just happens every year. You're not plowing, you're not spraying, you're not doing any of that stuff. And even then, there is a pest that will lay an egg in there. Well, you pick them early before that egg gets a chance to hatch. And you put them in a freezer, that kills them. That's assuming you got the pest. And that's not not for sure going to happen. You're going to get that test. And it ties into that story I told the last flip, where they figured out that the people down there in South America, they are the ones that planted the tropical rainforest that grew all these fruits and fruits and nuts. It just happened. That kind of goes in with what Bill Mollison said when he was in the forest there in Tasmania, and he was watching the wildlife there and how they would eat the fruit and, you know, walk around and disperse the fruit through their system, the fruit seeds, replant them. And that's when he got the idea of permaculture, or the idea of we shouldn't be doing this monoculture. We should be growing a lot more trees and a lot more perennials. He thought, geez, we can do better than the animals, and we can actually reason this out to what will grow where better. Be specific with our placement, where the critters don't do that. That's all that happened. And I think that story kind of matches the story of permaculture in that we don't want to be planting those grains. We want to be planting fruit trees and nut trees and bushes and any annuals that we grow, root crops. Brassicas were a part of the cabbage family. It's an alkaline plant. That's a good one. Too much nightshade isn't good for you, but South Americans and North Americans, they were growing potatoes and tomatoes. They actually had pretty good lives growing some of that stuff. So the corn, beans, and squash thing, I think that's a relatively recent thing for the American population back then. Beans have it a little bit too, that opioid, but not as bad. They were low on the list. I was surprised that coffee was pretty high. Actually, I shouldn't be surprised at that, because that makes you feel good, right? There was one thing, I'm trying to think, there was one thing I didn't like at all that was on that list, because I like to eat it. And you'll think, piece of plastic. Oh, I got one thing of greens left yet. Well, I think we'll try an experiment. We'll put them right on the top underneath the tarp. So all that moisture migrates up. I'm talking too much and I'm not thinking what I'm doing. Insulation. So there's something that I'm doing that's different. Still got a pretty good slope on this side. It's a little steeper on that side. I think that's why it's not firing on the ends, is because I got too much of a slope. I got to get it a little steeper. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like after 2 days. that's why permaculture kind of focuses on trees. Trees do a lot more than just feed humans too. I guess that's a discussion for another day. Maybe. We'll see what happens. May find some other subject to talk about, I don't know. But it's there in the manual, it's there. You take a permaculture design course, and they'll tell you everything. At least the people who do design courses based on like the manual, where it's an all-encompassing type of information, whereas there's a, I guess you can call it an advanced course where it just is specifically for an area, and they spend a lot of time on the area where they are actually performing their permaculture work. Okay, I got this pile that's a lot higher than the other ones, so we'll see if we can get those ends to start working. So if we get the manual, and getting the manual isn't going to help you that much either, because it's pretty complicated. I mean, I took a PDC and it took me all winter just to read the stupid book because it was so dense with information. I mean, now I'm getting it and I'm able to talk about it and think about it more readily. But back then it was tough. You just get the manual and not do the PDC. And I mean, if you can do it,